Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Monday, the 2nd of February. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. As the world condemns the killing of Japanese journalist Kenji Goto, the militant Islamic State group posts new photos online, this time showing the beheading of Iraqi security personnel. Kicking off a busy, extraordinary session, Korean lawmakers plan to pass a slew of economy-related bills, reach a deal over public pensions and tax returns, and hold a confirmation hearing for the Prime Minister nominee. Plus, Korea logs its largest ever annual current account surplus of nearly $90 billion in 2014. But we start with more atrocities from the extremist group that calls itself Islamic State. The group has beheaded an Iraqi police officer and 2 soldiers, according to pictures posted online. The gruesome images were released a matter of hours after IS murdered its second Japanese hostage, Kenji Goto. A Jordanian pilot is still thought to be held by Islamic State. Kim Young-gil starts us off.
In one photo, a blindfolded man, presumed to be a police lieutenant colonel, kneels in the street as a masked militant beheads his victim with a machete. Another photo shows an overweight masked militant struggling to behead a man identified as a captured Iraqi soldier. A second soldier was beheaded at the same location. If the photos are authentic, the killings would come just a day after the extremist group beheaded Japanese journalist Kenji Goto. A Jordanian pilot also being held by IS is facing the same gruesome fate as Mr. Goto. The pilot's father has appealed to the extremist group to spare his son's life.
We appeal to Islamic State in Iraq and Syria and ask them in the name of God and His Prophet, peace be upon him, and with the nationality of religion, the blood, to secure the life of our son, the pilot, Muathal Kasespe, and be gracious to release him.
The pilot was captured after his jet crashed in northeastern Syria in December during a bombing mission against IS. Islamic State has called for the release of Iraqi woman Sajida Rishawi, a would-be suicide bomber, in exchange for the pilot's life. She has been on death row in Jordan for her role in terrorist attacks on 3 hotels that killed nearly 60 people back in 2005. The UN Security Council on Sunday condemned Islamic State's execution of Japanese freelance reporter Kenji Goto. Council members stressed that Goto's execution has once again demonstrated the brutal tactics of IS militants and said those responsible for his murder will be held accountable. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now, it has emerged that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un personally attended military drills last month that were aimed at taking out US aircraft carriers. According to South Korean government sources on Sunday, North Korea's Navy and Air Force held its second military exercise of the month last week in the East Sea. The first, also overseen personally by Kim, took place on January 23rd, this time in the West Sea. Now, the most recent drill is known to have taken place near an island located in front of the port city of Wonsan, and they used the island, they pretended the island was the US aircraft carrier they were trying to destroy. North Korea's military fired torpedoes and dropped bombs from fighter jets onto that island. Submarine units also took part in those drills. The South Korean Navy has launched a special command that will be in charge of all submarine-related activities as part of efforts to bolster its underwater capabilities and combat readiness against North Korea. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The South Korean Navy inaugurated a submarine command on Sunday to bolster its underwater capabilities and combat readiness against North Korea. The fleet of the command, located in the southern port city of Chinhae, is led by a rear admiral in charge of 13 submarines.
This is not another submarine fleet. We are launching the submarine command to enhance our military strength and become the country's core strategic force.
The fleet of 13 includes 9 1,200-ton and 4 1,800-ton subs. By the year 2019, the Navy is planning to add 5 1,800-ton subs. And by 2020, the Navy will deploy 9 3,000-ton submarines capable of launching ballistic missiles. With the launch, South Korea has become the 6th nation to launch a submarine command after the US, Japan, France, Britain, and India. A huge advance since South Korea commissioned its first submarine from Germany in 1992. Even with the new command, North Korea still outnumbers the South in terms of submarine power. The North is believed to have some 70 submarines, roughly 4 times that of South Korea, and just behind the United States. Seoul and Washington also believe the North has new submarines that are capable of launching missiles. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Turning now to the National Assembly, and February's extraordinary session kicks off today with the rival parties focusing on a couple of key confirmation hearings and a number of bills aimed at revitalizing the sluggish economy. The ruling Saenuri party wants to pass at least a dozen bills that it hopes will improve the livelihoods of the people. It has also put reform of the public pension scheme for civil servants at the top of its agenda. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy says it plans to focus on adjusting the current year-end tax settlement scheme, which has gone down extremely negatively with the public. Before the revision, many salaried workers in Korea were able to get tax refunds at the end of the tax year that were commonly referred to as an extra month's pay. Confirmation hearings for Prime Minister nominee Lee Wang-gu and the Supreme Court Justice will also be held during this extraordinary session this month. The ruling party is selecting its new floor leader today. The opposition party will pick its new chairman on February 8th. And as I just mentioned there, the future direction of Korea's ruling Saenuri party could be shaped today as voting has started to elect a new floor leader. The two front runners are four-term lawmaker Lee Ju-young, who has pledged to restore relations between the party and the Park Geun-hye administration. Three-term lawmaker Yoo Seung-min, who has been much more critical of the administration, has vowed to completely overhaul the party ahead of next year's general elections. Two other candidates are also running for the post. The result is expected by this evening. Now, an Australian journalist charged with crimes against the Egyptian government is on his way home as we speak after being freed from 400 days of detention in Egypt. For more on this and other global headlines, we are going to connect to Eunice Kim at the News Centre. So, Eunice, this development came like a bolt of the blue, out of the blue really for many, as Cairo has held 3 Al Jazeera journalists for some time, despite intense international pressure to set them free.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. It is a homecoming that was a long time coming for Peter Greste's family. He will make his way back to Australia from Cyprus, where he is this morning. Australia's foreign minister was one of those whom he spoke to before departing Egypt on Sunday.
He was immensely relieved and he was desperate to come home to Australia and reunite with his family. He expressed his heartfelt thanks for the support that he's received here in Australia during this ordeal. He thanked the Australian government, the public of Australia, and particularly the journalists who had rallied to his cause. And he told me that it had sustained him through the very long time that he spent in jail, over 12 months.
Minister Bishop went on to say that Peter Greste was released unconditionally and that he was traveling with his brother Michael and Australia's ambassador to Egypt. You may remember he and two other Al Jazeera journalists were arrested back in December of 2013 and charged in June for spreading false news and supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, which has since been designated as a terrorist organization. Now, all three of the accused have adamantly maintained that they were simply reporting the news.
This is fabulous news for Peter Greste and his family. But of course, two of his colleagues from Al Jazeera remain behind bars in Cairo. In what kind of conditions, we don't know. But what are the prospects for them being released?
That certainly is the question this morning, Mark, but it remains to be seen. And Al Jazeera has said it will continue to lobby for the release of Mohammed Fahmy and Bahir Mohammed, who remain imprisoned despite their innocence. Now, there are reports that Mohammed Fahmy, who holds a dual Egyptian-Canadian citizenship, could be freed as well if he gives up his Egyptian nationality. Bahir Mohammed does not have dual citizenship, but since it is still unclear under what pretense Cairo had released Greste, the fate of the remaining two remains unclear.
And Eunice, switching our attention now to Hong Kong, and in that city, pro-democracy protesters have been back on the streets. They are out in force on Sunday to say that their fight is not over yet.
Yeah, that's right. The chief executive polls for which they want a direct nomination of candidates is, of course, still a long ways away in 2017. And in explaining the massive march, student leader Joshua Wong said the group wanted to sustain the momentum after the Occupy protests. Thousands of Hong Kong residents chanted, "We want true democracy," as they carried banners and yellow umbrellas, which, of course, have become symbols of last year's sit-ins that had stalled the financial hub for 11 weeks. This time, the police-approved assembly ended without incident. Organizers say about 13,000 people had turned out for the large-scale rally, short of their 50,000 target. Police, though, say their estimate puts the figure closer to 8,800 people.
Yes, much smaller than the first wave of protests, and we'll have to wait and see, really, if these protests bear any fruit. Well, thank you very much, Eunice, for your reporting, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. Korea's current account surplus hit a record high last year, totaling over $89 billion. The Bank of Korea says the annual surplus is around 10% higher than the $81 billion surplus posted in 2013. The amount, however, falls slightly short of the central bank's forecast of $90 billion that was made just last month. The balance of goods last year rose to $92.8 billion as the export of goods went up 0.5% last year from the previous year, while imports dropped 1.3%. The deficit of services account, which includes spending by Koreans overseas, stood at more than $8 billion in 2014, expanding from $6.5 billion deficit recorded a year earlier. Now, Seoul's skyline, which you can see behind me, could be looking rather different in a few years' time. Hyundai Motor Group has asked the Seoul city government for permission to build what will become Korea's tallest building on its recently acquired plot of land in Seoul's southern Gangnam district. Our Sun Jung-in has more.
In September last year, Hyundai Motor Group purchased an 80,000 square meter plot of land in southern Seoul from Korea Electric Power Corporation for nearly $10 billion. Korea's second largest group planned to establish a global business center on the land, including its headquarters and a car-based theme park. Last month, Chairman Chung Mong-gu laid out the group's vision to construct a 105-story building during his annual New Year's speech to Hyundai employees. On Sunday, the group finally submitted its detailed development scheme to the Seoul city government. The finalized plan is to build a 115-story structure that will house the group's headquarters, offices, and other business facilities. It's 10 floors higher than the previously envisioned building and will stand 571 meters tall. Hyundai Motor Group also aims to build a commercial facility inside a separate 62-story building featuring a convention center, hotel, and shopping mall. If everything goes to plan, the construction will become the tallest building in Korea. The Seoul city government says it will convene a meeting of experts from different fields to review the proposal and examine the impact the building could have on traffic flow and the environment of the local area. Currently, the 305-meter Northeast Asia Trade Tower in the western port city of Incheon is the tallest building in Korea. The Lotte World Tower in southeastern Seoul, which has run into a number of construction and safety controversies, will be 555 meters tall once it is completed next year. 손정인, ARIRANG News.
The Korean government is boosting support to businesses working in the nation's science and information and communications technology sectors. The Science Ministry says it's going to distribute more than $6.5 million to organizations and individuals who can play big roles in developing key space technologies. The ministry has put out a call for 29 projects related to space technology. Registration began last Friday and applicants have until March 3rd to submit their proposals to the government. The focus is on developing satellite technology which can be used towards improving national defense, to resolving social issues and creating new industries. Korea's LG Electronics was once one of the world's 3 largest mobile phone makers. Although it's been reduced over the years to a rather marginal player in the smartphone sector, it has very ambitious plans to emerge as a leading firm in the wearable market. For this week's Industry Insight, our Shin Se-min reports on why LG is attracting so much importance to last Friday's release of its latest curved smartphone, the G Flex 2.
It all started with Apple's rollout of the iPhone. Then the race to be the winning choice seemed to focus on larger displays, higher definition, thinner and lighter, and onto cheaper smartphones. They call it a curved smartphone or bendable, although not exactly bendable like this, but definitely more bouncier and flexible than other smartphones. But with smartphones highly commoditized and cheap Chinese phones with all the so-called cool factors flooding the market, could this shuffle up the smartphone industry? Not immediately. But experts believe its new phone has a feature providing new potentials to the saturated smartphone market, a market in which more than 1/3 of the world's entire population is forecast to own a smartphone by the end of the year.
I don't see it being a game changer, but then I still do see as a point of differentiation for the flagship phone. Yes, so they are moving in a direction which I think eventually some of the industry players would also move into.
LG officials believe the curved smartphone represents the first step in achieving flexibility and display innovations that are needed to develop wearable gadgets. Curved displays are required as they need to be wrapped around wrists and other body parts. Experts believe the wearables are the next big thing for smartphone makers who will have to overcome technological barriers, particularly in displays.
Probably something that you'd wear on the inside of your wrist with a large display and that's wearable, or something that actually rolled up or folded up that you could put into your pocket and then bring out in its full form. Those are the 2 implementations that seem the most likely.
It may look and sound futuristic, with smart devices rolling and folding in the hands of users. But industry watchers say this technology could be fully commercialized sooner than you imagine.
It will happen soon, in 5 to 7 years' time. Right now, only LG Electronics and Samsung Electronics have the technology to curve the display, and that technology will definitely add value to their smartphone sales in the long run.
Korea's LG Electronics has been steadily increasing its investment in R&D since 2011, with spending reaching some $2.8 billion in 2013. There's no guarantee such investment will lead to a game-changing wearable gizmo, but working in tandem with its affiliate LG Display, the world's largest screen maker, the analyst says LG is giving itself a valuable head start. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with the Korean national football team who returned to Korea after their second place finish at the 2015 Asian Cup over the weekend. And quite a different welcome this time compared to the 2014 Brazil World Cup. Now we remember a fan throwing taffy at the national team after the disastrous World Cup, but this time flowers and more flowers as the national team returned to Korea on Sunday after their incredible Asian Cup run. And smiles all around for the Taeguk Warriors, who finished runner-up for the first time in 27 years, as the future of the national team looks bright with this latest finish. Now, some wins are more special than others, as Korea's Chen Ayan showed over the weekend after winning the LPGA season opener, the 2015 LPGA Coach Championship. Of course, with their mom watching her compete for the first time ever, she storms through in the final round of the event, including 4 birdies in the front 9 to take the title with 16 under par overall for a single-stroke victory. Now, she added that her latest victory was even more special as her mom was there to see her win as she gets the season's first victory. Meanwhile, a great start to her LPGA career as Chang Han-ah kicks off her rookie season in the LPGA, finishing tied for second at 15 under par, just a single stroke behind the winner. 17 years and 9 months old. Now, when I was that young, my greatest achievement was probably completing my first week of college. Now, it was tough with 4 8 a.m. classes that semester, but Lydia Ko's accomplishment dwarfs that, as she's set to become the youngest #1 ranked golfer in history. Now, after finishing the 2015 LPGA Coast Championship tied for second and Park In-bi finishing tied for 13th, her #2 ranking will turn into a #1 ranking as she's set to take over Park In-bi for the top ranking. And at the age of 17 years and 9 months, she'll become the youngest #1 golfer in the sport's history. Now, the previous record was 21 years and 5 months by Tiger Woods in the PGA and Korea's Shin Jae at 22 years and 5 days in the LPGA. Now, if you're not a big fan of football, the 2015 Asian Cup final wasn't the only major sporting event that took place down under. The 2015 Australian Open has been going on as well, with Serena Williams dominating Maria Sharapova for the women's single title on Saturday. But on Sunday, quite a matchup between Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray. Now, just an epic start to the final as Novak Djokovic sneaks past Murray in the first set 7-6, 7-5. Before the break comes back with a 7-6, 7-4 victory to level it up. But the long set's an issue for Andy Murray as Djokovic starts taking advantage of his opponent's mistakes, taking the third set 6-3 and absolutely dominating the fourth set 6-0 for his 5th Australian Open title and his 8th Grand Slam title. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. First working day of the month kicked off slightly milder than yesterday, but still quite chilly. In the meantime, daytime highs will bounce back to above the seasonal averages, topping out at 5 here in Seoul. So we'll have a big temperature gaps between lows and highs under dry conditions, which make people catch cold easily. The cold activity level, as we can see, will be high to very high across the nation. So take good care of your health to stay healthy. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So the daytime high in Seoul will climb up to 5, while the top temperatures in Daegu and Gwangju rise to 8, and Busan will peak at 9 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will top out at 8, and Daejeon and Dokdo should see a high of 5 and 4 respectively. Now, spring is right around the corner as we have Ipchun, which marks the beginning of the spring on the solar term this week on Wednesday. So the temperatures will remain on the mild side for the time being, and neither snow nor rain is in store. That's all for the weather. Back to you, Mark, in the studio.
Well, thank you very much for the weather, Jian, and I must say I'm looking forward to the spring. Well, that's all we have for now. There are plenty more stories online, and it's also worth checking out our smartphone app for all the latest news and Arirang TV programs. We'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.